Good morning, good evening, everybody. I hope you're all well. Thank you so much for finding time to join us this morning. We are pleased to welcome you to this third session of the African EV Sustainable Energy and Transport Series.
Je suis content de vous retrouver aujourd'hui pour une session du traitement de l'électricité.
So this is a space where we seek to inform, educate, influence, and share innovative and relevant ideas and trends that are shaping Africa's energy and e-mobility sector.
Sur l'électricité en Afrique et les réseaux électriques.
Yeah, so for African EV, the moderators invite experts, enthusiasts, and other stakeholders across Africa to join in the conversation, to network, and to share key statistical and relevant data. So ultimately, our idea is to influence a systems change to renewable energy and accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles. We have a high-level panel of experts from across Africa who have joined us in today's session, and we appreciate them taking the time off their busy schedules to be with us. So this panel was constituted to provide an overview of electricity ecosystem in some African countries and their sub-regions. So the main focus is to see what is the availability, accessibility, affordability, and also the impacts following recent trends, and give a perspective on what we can expect in the near future. So I am your host, Alwora Luta. I am part of a team of 5 African EV moderators. This session is planned for 75 minutes, and the topic of discussion is electricity availability in Africa and its impact on e-mobility adoption. The session will be moderated by Mr. JC Nyokabi, an expert in the field. French translation is available for this session. Yes. At this point, I hand over to the moderator of the day, Mr. JC, to introduce himself and take us through this session. Thank you. JC, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Luta. My name is Jesse Nyokabi. I'm an engineer by professional. I'm also a researcher and a green energy consultant with avid interest in volunteerism. I'm also currently a green energy facilitator where I explore innovative opportunity to accelerate the impact of green energy on our environment, economy, communities. I'm also into research, currently working on my postgraduate research in innovative supercritical geothermal drilling engineering. I'm also the Kenyan representative at Impact Global Alliance, where we are working toward achieving sustainable development goals through something we call the People's First Public-Private Partnership in terms of infrastructural development within the global. I'm very excited to host you and to be the moderator for this. One of the best things about this is that when it comes to electric vehicles, the grid is something very important to us. That is both the off-grid and on-grid, because when you talk about e-mobility, electricity is one thing that we need to put into much consideration. And there has been a lot of questions here and there in terms of the on-grid and the off-grid. On-grid being the biggest, where there is a lot of questions. And the best thing is that we have been able to bring a panelist of people who will be able to answer as much questions as they can. So I'm requesting those of you who have joined us today, kindly you can post your questions. We shall be checking. in this forum, we intend to have more of a discussion because we want people to ask as many questions as possible, while my experts, the people who have been invited as panelists, will be there to answer as much questions as they can. So I would like to proceed by inviting my panelists to introduce themselves. And after they introduce themselves, then we shall proceed into the discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's 1:15 this afternoon in South Africa. It's Kopiso Mauninyani. I'm from Eskom Distribution, and I'm currently based in Cape Town. And my biggest role currently is on renewable energy, and I am driving the electric vehicle adoption in South Africa on behalf of Eskom. And particularly now we are looking at the Eastern Cape province, those who know South Africa, where the manufacturing hub actually sits. Most of the vehicles are being manufactured from the Eastern Cape. That's now your normal ICE vehicles, and therefore I think it is the right place as South Africa that if there is any province in the country that we need to concentrate on or look at or to change the narrative that we currently have to EVs, it must be the Eastern Cape. And I think I'm happy that I am going to be driving that on behalf of Eskom Distribution. I am an engineer by profession, electrical, and I've been with Eskom now for more than 20 years already. So yeah, and it's thanks, I think, to be invited, Gert, to this important discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bishop. I would like to proceed to David. I can see you are just near me. You can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is David Mugambi. Currently sitting in Nairobi. I am with Kenya Power, the sole distributor of energy, retailer of energy in the country. Currently at Kenya Power, I head the transport logistics department. I'm also driving the mechanization and e-mobility agenda at Kenya Power. Within the organization, I have over 20 years experience, of 10 of them in distribution in various parts of the country, managing the network, and the other 15 within the transport department. I've been involved in e-mobility over the last 5 years, since the first stakeholders walked into my office attempting to convert our fleet, especially the 4x4s, from ICE to electric. So currently I am the bridge between the e-mobility industry and the organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer David. Most welcome to the panelists. Steve, are you with us?
Yes, I am with you. I am Engineer Stephen Musarurwa. I am based, I'm with the Zimbabwe Electricity Supply Authority, ZESA, but in the transmission and distribution company. I am responsible for electricity generation planning, and I've been doing it since 2011 as the section head responsible for electricity load forecasting and generation planning. So I've also been involved in the very first justifications for adoption and of the EV technology within the electricity utility company. So and also incorporation of EVs in the national planning of electricity generation. So this is my portfolio. I'm also the energy cluster, infrastructure energy cluster chairperson for for the Zimbabwe Institute of Engineers. So that is me. Thank you very much.
Stephen, thank you very much for that, for the introduction. And to start with this, I would like to pose that question to David. We can start with you. What is the situation from your country in terms of preparing the electricity situation in your country?
Currently in Kenya, we have covered 75% of our population has access to electricity. We having accelerated this from that 2% 10 years ago. The urban areas, we have 100% access, and the rural areas, about 65%. In terms of the energy availability, our installed capacity is slightly less than 3,200 megawatts. And our current peak demand is in the tune of 2,200. So we still have capacity. And at night, during off-peak, our demand goes down to almost 1,200. So we have actual capacity to drive or to accommodate immediate requirements within the e-mobility space. Additionally, this coverage also includes areas otherwise would be called off-grid, because with the government has set up very many off-grid stations, which we also run. So basically, to the customers, they are still on the grid. So when we talk about 75% coverage, it is practically across the entire country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. That was the situation, that is the electricity situation in Kenya, both on-grid and off-grid. I posed the same question to Co-Bishop. What is the electricity situation within your country?
The South African situation, I think everyone understands it now with the load shedding that we currently have. But if we look at the figures where we are with access to electricity, it is currently about more than 90% coverage across the country. Noting, of course, that in the urban areas we have full coverage there without any doubt. We're still having a big electrification program. For the rest of the next 2-3 years, where we need to bring a number of people in our rural areas really back into the grid. And we're currently concentrating on areas like in the Eastern Cape province, which is mostly rural, so it's KwaZulu-Natal. And we've got Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and most parts of Northwest and the Northern Cape province. So, essentially this is where most of our connections, into the country will be going. Now, if you look at our current demand currently in the country, it's about 32 gigawatts, that we have. And the reason why we've got load shedding today is because approximately about 24 gigawatts is reliable, so the rest is not. And I think this is where, our biggest issues are emanating. Now, with respect to off-grid solutions, we've not been that big in that, in Eskom. I mean, everyone in the country has been talking grid connections. And what we have seen in the past was that in our rural areas, at least, most of the people there, when you come with off-grid, solution, they would just throw a blind eye. And it is being the perception that, off-grid supply or solution, it's almost inferior power. So I think we had to do quite a lot in South Africa to be able to change that narrative. I think now people begin to realize that actually it is the best solution currently, citing where we currently are, in the country. So yeah, that's essentially, I think, where we are, and we'll get more into a final discussion into our daily energy needs and how it will affect EVs in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We were really waiting to hear from you about the South Africa situation. I think it has been there. There has been all manners of discussion about the situation there, but now listening from the person who is on the ground, it's something else altogether. Thank you very much. Robert, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good morning or good afternoon to everyone. I'm Robert Sobaji from the Ministry of Energy. I've been with the Ministry of Energy for almost 10 years. I am the Deputy Director Power and also in charge of alternative and nuclear energy, and also with the energy efficiency and conservation units. We also do lots of renewables, MFEM, and power policy planning. So I'm also the coordinator of the Ghana energy transition into clean energy. Okay, I mean, so far, further discussions will reveal my role in the energy sector. Thank you.
Robert, before you go, I was asking my first question. And my first question was, what is the situation of electricity in your country? And coming from Ghana, we are really waiting to hear from you.
Okay, so in Ghana, currently, we have about 88.7% electricity access in Ghana, and with a target of hitting 90% electricity access by 2024. And then with a universal access of 99.8% by 2030. So we are doing a lot of aggressive power extension, transmission line extension, and also integrating with our neighbors. Our current installed capacity is a little bit above 5.4 gigawatts, which is providing electricity access to all. The last mile of the electricity extension is the most difficult one because those are the isolated and island communities. And with those communities and far to reach areas as well. And those areas and island and lakeside communities, we intend to use renewable energy mini grids to be able to power those off-grid and far to reach areas, because using submarine cables seem to be economically not feasible based on the productive use of energy in those areas. So to the extent to which those areas grow and we assess that it is economical to connect them to grid, currently the policy is to power such areas with renewable energy mini grids to be able to reach universal access. So this about the electricity sector, but I don't want to go with the petroleum sector and the other sectors. So I think you wanted me to talk about the electricity sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert, and feel welcomed. That question was meant to welcome you into the panelists. More questions will be coming. My second question to my panelists, now we get into the intricate details, is how does EV adoption potentially grow the electricity demand in your country? I will start with Robert again. You can start us.
Thank you very, very much. I'll say obviously EV growth, which is a switch from the fossil fuel petroleum sector to the electricity sector, will definitely change the demand forecast, which has been done, which is done periodically. Because currently in Ghana, we have over 2,000 EVs already, even though we don't have the infrastructures in place nationwide. So we realize that if we don't plan for it, then our generation planning will have a deficit. So in our energy transition framework document, EV for the future and for the medium, in fact, for the short, medium to long term, was planned, was taken care of to make projections of energy demand, which really, really shot the amount of installed capacity that we envisage in the years to come. And also made a significant financial requirement for energy transition, because we have to set up EV stations nationwide and make sure that we provide sustainable energy for these EV stations. So obviously, yes, it has changed the demand, which was forecasted for the next 10 years. We had to relook at it, and we realized that there's a really big stick in the generation requirement for the e-vehicle sector. If we include railway, then that means that we have even increased the demand astronomically. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. That was a good one. I will proceed to Co-Bishop. Heinrich, how does EV adoption?
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to share an interesting slide with everyone. And you can confirm if you can see.
Yes, I can see it.
Right. So what I've said earlier on was the demand for the country South Africa, roughly around 32 gigawatts. And what we're currently seeing with all the issues we've got in our power stations, particularly the coal stations, we can deliver 24 gigawatts roughly, reliably so, without without any issues. But if you look at just our energy needs on a daily basis, it's around 500 gigawatt hours, which we currently not able to supply. And if we have now to include EVs into the into the fleet as well, then I think the picture changes slightly. So currently, the ICEs in the country, we've got around 12 million, and we just did a quick calculation. I mean, even if you just take 10% of EV adoption, that would mean into our demand roughly around 2 to 6 gigawatts, which will equate to between 30 to 50 gigawatt hours per day. So you can see it's enormous, substantial. Now, I can also just point out that we have another program that's run by one of our universities, University of Stellenbosch, where they're looking at minibus taxis, and they're looking at conversion there. And what it would mean, in future, is that for those at least, you would need another 30 gigawatt hours per day, or if you like 10 gigawatts during the peak times. So that's quite a lot of changes that will essentially happen in the South African market. I mean, if you look where we are with our issues that we anyway having without EVs currently, if EVs comes, it's an additional burden into into the country's energy needs. So yeah, so that's basically where we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Co-Bishop. I believe everyone was really waiting to hear your response on that question. One of the great thing about this is that we are learning from each other as African continent. We are trying to pick lessons from others. What have they done? What are they intending to do, so that we can compare notes and know what we can learn from each other? That is. So I will be posing the same question on David. What is the situation in Kenya? EV potential in stimulating electricity demand. David.
Thank you. On the Kenyan situation, the potential for EV stimulating demand is quite huge, taking into account that unlike the rest of the continent, most of our energy, actually 90% of the energy we dispatch through the grid is renewable. So we'll not be using that energy to generate electricity, then clean it up through EVs. So basically our positioning in terms of EV adoption, based on our sources of energy, is very attractive. On the other hand, when we look at the potential, a single bus in a year would consume almost 90 gigawatt hours on a year, assuming they work even 300 days out of the 360. On the two-wheelers, we would expect almost 2 gigawatts per unit per year. So the potential is huge, and the impact it would have on our grid is that our entire infrastructure from generation to the retail, we are currently operating with very low demand in terms of the time. So if we are to get this demand at night, for example, it will practically optimize on our existing resources without any additional investment. So basically that would make the grid, or rather the entire value chain, more profitable, and very likely result even in lower tariffs than we already have, because currently the tariffs from the population is that we feel that tariffs are a bit, it's quite expensive, but when we look at the demand and the per capita utilization of energy, that results in such a quite a high cost. But if we are able to move more energy on this grid, then likely the unit, the cost of dispatching this energy would definitely get lower. So we have a very high potential, and though Kenya currently has adequate energy to cover the immediate needs, but within 5 years, even if we are to get a fraction of the existing ice, up to 10%, then we would definitely have to start planning for additional generation. Otherwise, this is extremely an attractive proposition to be able to make our grid more profitable and bring down even our tariffs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. That was very informative. I'm still reminding people, keep on posting those questions. This is the best forum for the panelists, for them to answer, especially those questions that are burning issues. And we keep on having these questions about the grid and the EVs and how they relate. This is the best time to ask those questions. Going back to Stephen. Stephen, I will still go back to my question 1 about what is the situation in terms of on and off grid power situation in Zimbabwe, and also to the second question that the rest of the panelists were answering: how does EV adoption potentially grow electricity demand?
Okay, thank you. The electrification rates in Zimbabwe in urban areas is about 86% thereabout, as per estimates. And in rural areas, we are looking at about 25% there, and it's as per estimates. And our forecasted electricity demand is at this year, we are looking at about 2,280 megawatts. And we are talking of a system that has actually reached this peak as early as around 2000. But due to the economic challenges that Zimbabwe has experienced over the years, that demand did not grow as it could have been to its potential. So in terms of your question as far as on-grid and off-grid systems are concerned, we have about over 860,000 grid-connected customers to the electricity utility company. And we have over 305,000 new connection applications that have been received. So there's a project that is right now at a very advanced stage that is about to be implemented to connect over 305,000 new customers to the Zimbabwean grid. So that gives you the picture of the grid connected customers existing and those that are actually waiting to be connected. Then as far as the off-grid customers are concerned, we can't give you specific figures. This is what we are aware of is that there is a very steep penetration of solar PV technology within Zimbabwe. Not only solar PV technology, but also a penetration of other modern energy forms like LPG, as well as biogas. So in rural areas, these are actually increasing in actual penetration. And off-grid systems are very critical for our Zimbabwean population due to some of the very remote areas that we have. And we're a large country in terms of land size, and but small relatively in terms of population. So our electrification rates in rural areas have been limited mainly by financial viability of projects due to the extent of the infrastructure that is required versus the customer base that will be connected. So then this make it at rural areas a candidate and an appropriate area where off-grid system will best serve that customer base. But in terms of the actual statistics, there are no recent surveys that have been carried out, even against the background of penetration, steep penetration of the adoption of the solar PV technology, even in the rural areas. So there are no reliable statistics that we can present at this stage. I think it is a time for us maybe to commission a survey so that we understand the baseline situation, what is happening, and the actual technologies that are being taken on, the sizes and so on. So I think that is the picture as far as the grid and off-grid system is concerned. Zimbabwe grid is mainly at the moment grid connected. And however, the regulatory framework and legal framework has actually opened up substantially to allow for off-grid systems as well as on-grid systems. It's now the market movement in terms of working to exploit the new space that has been created that is lagging behind. Then as far as the second question is concerned, if I can just refresh myself to the second question, it was talking about stimulation of demand, the potential stimulation of demand by from electric vehicles. At this stage, there are very few electric vehicles that are in the country. Government is actually led through the renewable energy policy in terms of, from a policy perspective, it has actually put some incentives to promote electric vehicles. But in terms of numbers, there are a few companies, manufacturers and retailers that have now set up camp in Zimbabwe. But in terms of actual numbers that are on the market, we still have a very low population. And the potential is very, very high as far as stimulation of demand is concerned. But we also recognize it to be very complex because it's happening at a time when self-generation is also growing. But what we can see that is very clear, I think there will need to be a very specific study to be carried out that looks very deep into the energy drivers and the technology penetration for us to be able to quantify and project the impact on demand and growth against the potential demand reduction that may also arise as a result of penetration of energy efficiency as well as self-generation. So it's a very complex portfolio of parameters, market parameters that is happening. So, but what is very clear is that what has excited the electricity utility companies since around 2017, it was the realization that if electric vehicles increase substantially onto our market, the obvious impact that we can see is that there will be an energy substitution whereby the petroleum energy, the liquid fuel that is consumed to drive the transport sector, the electricity utility will actually start to dip into that demand as that demand is shifted to electricity demand. So that is what we are very clear about in terms of, and the extent to which there is going to be a shift of petroleum liquid fuel demand to electricity demand. It's a very attractive prospect for us, but the extent is proportionate to the extent of the adoption of the electric vehicles, especially in light of the fact that electric vehicles, they are more cheaper to run than the combustion engine driven vehicles. So that is what I can maybe submit at this point. In summary, it's a very complex arrangement that we need to look at properly, and no studies have been done to date. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. The best thing is that we are here as Africans. We are learning from each other. We are learning from you. You're also learning from the rest of the countries that are well represented from the panelists.
Do you mind if I supplement with something else?
Kind of go ahead.
The other impact that we are also aware that we believe it adds to the complexity of this, though it's very interesting and exciting, is the vehicle to home systems that we've seen emerging on the electric vehicles solutions. We believe that the current situation in Zimbabwe is that the demand outstrips supply. So to balance the system, we are effectively load shedding. I think a relatively similar situation to South Africa. So what the electric vehicles will do is they'll offer that opportunity to charge at times of conveniency, or where there is electricity supply, be it at your office through intermittent charging, or the time that electricity will be available. But what it also means is that if you drive your vehicle, you get home and there is no electricity supply, effectively your vehicle becomes your electricity supply point. That means there will be a shift from use of reliance on standby electricity generators that are either petrol or diesel powered. So this will actually be also another interesting mix into it. But what it also does is that it means there will be energy that will be absorbed from the grid, but there will also be energy that will be put back into the grid. The extent of the interaction and the overall effect to the overall system, it will have to be determined. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for that. That was very insightful. Thank you very much. Now, to my panelists, I want us to go to the third question. From there, now we go to the intricate details. My third question is a very simple question, but you just give your thoughts on what you think. And my question is, between off-grid and on-grid, which has the highest potential to grow EV adoption in your country? Between off-grid and on-grid, which has the highest potential to grow EV adoption? Robert, I can start with you.
All right. Thank you very much. I don't think the answer is very explicit, because I think off-grid and on-grid complement each other. In a country like Ghana, where we have electricity access reaching almost 90% by 2024, we have to make sure that electricity supply is constant and is available. And I think for the past 6 years, that is what the energy sector of Ghana has proven, for constant availability of power on the grid. So I would say in urban centers, the grid will play a very critical role to provide electricity for e-vehicles. But when we move to the rural areas, or areas like the off-grid and the island communities, we can say that the off-grid system will also play a critical role. But you have to know that these off-grid systems are relatively expensive as compared to the on-grid, because we have to make sure that there are power banks to supply power to the system, to anybody at any hour of the day, which the grid does. So because the e-vehicles move day and night, not only during the day. So where really necessary, or where electricity access is not available, then we have to make sure that we use the off-grid system. Even with the on-grid system, I still believe that they also have to have some backup power, backup system to be able to provide electricity to charging stations. And these charging stations sometimes also come with their own backup system to be able to make sure that the power coming from the grid or whatever source, it is smoothing and it has that high inertia to charge the e-vehicles. So as I say, it is not an explicit answer whether it's off-grid or on-grid, but it's based on the electrification access of the country, and then the power projections and the power reliability, and based on also the electricity policy. So I think for urban centers in Ghana, the grid will play more active role than the being off-grid than in the rural and hard to reach areas of the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert, for that insightful comment, discussion. I wanted to go to Co-Bishop. Co-Bishop, you can tell us on that question.
Yeah, no, thanks, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, look, I think my colleague Robert, he articulated it very well. Look, if you look at where South Africa is, if we were not in the situation that we are currently, then it was a clear one, it would have been great, because I think that's how stable we were in the past. But now that balance will depend on how quickly as a country we transition, from normal grid to off grid, looking at renewable energy. So that balance essentially, if you like, would be there. But if you have to isolate the country into different sections and you perhaps look at the urban portions of the country, then I think by any doubt it would be your grid, connection, because it is robust enough in those areas. And we, of course, currently we seem to be wanting in most of the rural areas. So there, I wouldn't think, we are at that stage. But I think the fact that South Africa is now transitioning, where we have to build quite quickly, our base around renewable energy. So I would say between now up to 2030, if you look at our plans, how we, our just energy transition, you can actually see that there would be a time where our adoption of particularly, renewable energy, technologies would have been at a stage where you could complement it very well with, with EVs. And I think maybe going back to also what Stephen said, my colleague from Zimbabwe, around the importance of EVs in the evening, where we changing our charging patterns. In fact, that EV now becomes also part of your system. In fact, we were talking about recently what we call peak shaving. So really onto the peak periods of the, of our grid, what happened during peak times. Now, if you do have, enough electric vehicles at that moment, even you could deploy your stationary storage, facilities during those peak. They become part of your grid, and that can actually kill our peak off, in the evening. So yeah, I think it's still something that as a country we need to think relatively hard about, where we're going. But I think at this current stage, our reliance obviously would be on standard grid connection, But that grid connection is currently so much constrained that if you do bring anything else, you know, you would have actually a problem. But really, the answer lies onto how the transition up to 2030 will go for South Africa, where our mix will be. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Going to Stephen, what is the situation in your country? What are your thoughts?
Okay, thank you very much for that. For me, it's relatively simple because the question, when I look at it, it's looking at which one provides the highest potential for growth. And from what I can see from my end, it's clear that the grid provides the highest potential than off-grid systems. And my basis for that is that when you look at EVs, what are the things that actually constrain the penetration of this technology? We are looking at charging systems, the convenience of charging systems. We are looking at fast charging and so on. And when you look at our off-grid systems, when we just look at it with a rough surveys as to on what is happening on our market, we see that the quality of our off-grid systems, it's a new market, it has got a lot of suppliers, and maybe the quality of the hardware as well as the design, it's clear that it's not yet at that stage where we are seeing consistency of system designs as well as products that are delivering reliably to clients' requirements. So when you look at power supply, the main priority is to supply electricity as a basic requirement to the user. And that basic requirement is currently, I think there is some background noise. So that basic requirement, we can see that our current off-grid systems that we can see on our market, they are not sized appropriately. They don't have the adequate capacity, and they are not performing reliably as far as either the technology and the hardware configuration. So thinking that setup, how long and how much in terms of time it might take for a migration to a point where these systems that are off-grid are now serving their clientele better. I think maybe 5 years or so. It will require various portfolios of policies and intervention by government, but we can't then see that being a robust platform or a foundation from which we can actually stimulate the growth of electric vehicles. We think that may not, if those systems can't provide the basic electricity supply requirements, then to expect a stimulation of electric vehicles growth by off-grid system against that context, I think it's quite a tall order. But when you look at the grid system, it's relatively robust. It has got its own issues, but it is mostly appropriate for most of the EV requirements that we can see. One of the things that makes an EV to be very convenient and easy to use is the fast charging. I think this can easily be provided for on various on-grid systems, and on-grid systems also provide the wireless charging that can either be intermittent, opportunistic charging in parking bays in urban areas, as an example, or it can be incorporated by utility companies on highways. So and that can be easily accommodated on grid than off grid. Then the reliability of the charging systems against the reliability of the grid. I know right now we are experiencing intense load shedding, but we do believe that we are stabilizing very soon. So when our grid is performing very well, we believe it's the most robust platform to stimulate and sustain growth of electric vehicles as well as electricity demand, and the off-grid systems we can actually view them as only supplementary. That is my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. That was so detailed, and we appreciate that, because we also want to learn from the challenges maybe you have or what you're doing different, so that other countries maybe they may pick one thing or another. David, what is the situation in Kenya? What do you think? Off-grid, on-grid, which one has the highest potential for EV adoption?
Thank you. Just like my colleagues Robert, Kopisho, and Stephen have said, is that it is not a very straight answer, because you look in the short term and also look in the long term. Currently, this EV e-mobility is an emerging space in the continent. So not say that it is widespread. Actually, it's very nascent. Most of the players are still in the R&D stage, trying to get the right products and the right models, both financing and operational models, to be able to roll out. So in my opinion, this developmental stage is likely, or is most likely, to be based within the urban areas where we have the grid. Also, during the development stage, people need ease of access to power, reliability, adequacy. So in my opinion, the grid is the most convenient option to accelerate the adoption, in that it is easy to get in without much capital, and you only deal with paying for energy consumption during this developmental stage. And most of the products which are likely to find themselves in the rural setups where the off-grid solutions would be most likely to be set up, these products must be proven within the urban setups. So the accessibility to the grid power is, in my opinion, has the highest potential of growing adoption of the EVs. Also, the other, just like my colleagues have raised, also there is the issue of capacity. We would look at existing infrastructure and how easy it is. If you have heavy consumption, for example, for the four-wheelers, you require substantial investment to be able to change those from off-grid solutions. Meanwhile, for the two-wheelers, it is very easy even to plug them in existing household supplies. So the potential initially is with the grid, after which, when we get to the right advancement in the adoption, then the off-grid is likely also to accelerate at a later stage when we are done with the low-hanging fruits which are within the grid systems. Thank you.
David, that was very insightful. Thank you very much for that discussion, a good one. Akinwale, I can see you have joined us. What is the situation in terms of electricity in your country, and how does that affect the EV adoption in your country?
Thank you very much. My name is Akinwale Mureni. Okay, yeah, the energy situation in Nigeria currently, which I'm representing, is nothing really to write home about, and that is one of the things we are trying to correct, because we deal in renewable energy, or let me say solar energy in general, and we have carried out several installations across the country. Nigeria has 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. And out of the 36 states, I want to tell you that we've been able to cover about 34 of the states, including the Federal Capital, Abuja. Okay, and from these installations that we carry out, we have individuals that we install for. We have government parastatals and agencies, as well as private organizations, as well as NGOs that we installed for as well. So what I'm saying in essence is that we are trying to support the government and making sure that the electricity we provide is not expensive. People could afford, and as well as have normal power supply in their house, upgrade, if I may put that one straight, upgrade, then support the available government power supply in the country. So what we do is just to provide power supply for people in Nigeria. Yes, that's what we do. We have been able to provide energy solution for people, individuals, private organizations, government agencies and parastatals, non-governmental organizations. We are not providing electricity generally for Nigerians, but we are complementing the government efforts already in boosting energy supply at an affordable rate. So that's what we do.
Thank you very much. We were waiting to hear from you about the situation in Nigeria. Thank you very much. Now, because of the time, I wanted to ask the question. There was a question from the inbox. The question is directed to David and Mr. Robert. And the question is, I would like to request their views on access to electricity for three-wheelers, that is tuk-tuk drivers, considering Mombasa region in Kenya and Tamale region in Ghana. That question is directed to David and Mr. Robert. David, you can start.
The access to the three-wheelers, energy demand and requirements are just like the ones for the two-wheelers. So these are products which can be charged simply from the normal in any household. And similarly, if we were to look at the model where we handle with the battery swapping, they would not be operating any different from the two-wheelers. So within our Mombasa and the country in Kenya, we have the capacity within our grid to meet all the energy demands of the two-wheelers in the country, even if they were to be converted to EVs or instantaneously. So there is, I would wish to state that the three-wheelers and two-wheelers energy demands charging systems are practically the same. There is no difference, and that's actually on the lower end of they are the list of our worries in far as energy the supply is concerned. Thank you, David.
Robert, I think the question on Tamale region in Ghana was yours.
What I want to say is that for the tuk-tuk, they are operating in the rural areas, and because of how they move about all the time. Because of how they move about all the time, they are able to also spend all their energy charges. So they will be requiring frequent charging. And so what we look at is based on the energy access. But as we said, some of the remote areas may not have energy access and also bad roads, and it's only the tuk-tuk that can go there. So for such a situation, as a colleague said, we may also require them to have battery backups where they have a charged battery sitting inside their system for swapping when their old system is done. And that means that you have to make sure that then the tuk-tuk's battery system are standardized to be able to do the battery swapping and then maybe other excess battery in the system. Also, for electricity generation, for the off-grid areas, if you are able to do standalone systems, it's just that such a systems may come at a higher energy production, and that may also be a disincentive for the tuk-tuk to charge their systems there. So we have to find a way to incentivize the system to make sure that that tariff is equal to the tariff coming from the grid, so that they don't feel any difference when they are charging from the grid or when they are charging from an off-grid area. So those are the plans for the tuk-tuk. Just like when you know how many liters of fuel you have to buy before you reach your next station, with time, they will be able to calculate to know that with this amount of charging, my next charging will be at these kilometers, and I'll be able to reach an area where they could charge their system. Thank you very much.
Maybe Jesse,
Thank you
I would
very much.
like to add something.
Okay, go ahead, David.
Maybe something else we need also to take to appreciate is the model being used, because between the tuk-tuk, the two-wheeler, or even the four-wheelers, the battery is the main cost associated with these EVs. Within Kenya, most of the people already, or rather the players, are actually leasing out these batteries so that they remove the risk of the batteries from the operators of both the two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and even the four-wheelers, the buses. So eventually, the model of delivering energy to the two-wheelers and three-wheelers is basically from the dealers who have taken the risk on the batteries. So some of them are likely to operate battery swapping because the batteries actually belong to them. They sell the energy as a service as opposed to wholesale purchase. So that's what I've seen happening in Kenya at the moment. They are very, I would say, very few, unless those who are using this for their own private use. But for most commercial use, the batteries are on a lease kind of arrangement with the operators.
Thank you very much, David. That was very okay. For the matter of time, I can see is here it's past 21 minutes from 3. I think for the sake of keeping time, I would like to hand over back to my host, that is Ruta. And before that, I would like to appreciate my panelists. I know there was more discussions into this. I hope next time when we invite you shall come. We are yet to finalize on this discussion because the issues to do with the electricity and the grid and grid management, it's a question that is always coming up, and those people in the EV ecosystem need to understand how the people, again, from the other side of the electricity ecosystem are well preparing themselves on EV. So, Lotta, I can hand over back to you.
Yes, thank you so much, JC, and the panelists for the interesting session. I think if we had more time, we would continue with the discussions. What I would like to raise our attention to is the questions that have been raised in the chat box. So if you can note them, and maybe we continue on with the discussion on our platforms. Kindly follow us on African EV on Twitter, and then maybe we can have more of these discussions there. So thank you so much for your time. We will not take any more of your time. Just to inform you that the next session will be in April. On the 27th of April, we'll be looking at public transport and EVs in Africa. So how can these discussions and the information that we have here be translated into the public transport? So very interesting topic, and we'll be having an equally capable and informative session from experts that are already invited. So be sure to save the dates and join us then. Thank you, JC, for the moderation. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to the African EV moderators that have been supporting the technical part since the beginning of these sessions. Please have a good day and share your contacts so that we can also keep in touch with you. Bye.